Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 86 for Monday, July 13th. My name is Farbod Merkazi, here as always with Jace Hatfield, who has a big week coming up. Jace, I'm going to see you this week.
I'm going to see, we're going to see the whole clan back together again this week. I'm getting married on Friday, so very excited.
Yeah, it's. I think I told you after my wedding last month that one of my aunt's words of wisdom was, now that your wedding's done, you get to go to all your friends' weddings and judge. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to judge, but I'm gonna have a lot of fun. I'm so excited to celebrate you guys. I'm so excited to see you. We have a big show today. Big 12 Media Days happened. We get to talk about real football. To do that, though, we have our resident Big 12 expert, or so-called expert, Logan Shanks. He's joining the show. Logan, how are we doing?
Doing well. Excited to be on here, and we'll also be seeing you guys in 4 days. That was actually in the contract for when I was like, all right, yeah, Lydia, you can marry this guy, but he's got to let me on his podcast before the wedding. So, no,
do you? So is Big 12 expert okay, or is there a different title you prefer?
Man, let's not put labels on it. Big 12 fanboy. Love watching the Big 12 as an Iowa State alumni, and it's really looking forward to being on here and talking about some real football.
Yeah, no, that's what I remember last year. The second media day started, Jason and I looked at each other on camera. Obviously, we weren't in the same place, and we were like, "Shoot, we get to actually talk about football now."
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the exciting part of all this. Jason, all the jitters, all the butterflies, all there.
Yeah, they're there. It's from the show, man. No, every emotion you can feel, like the like 1 minute you're just really excited and you're comfortable. And then all of a sudden it hits you. I have to do all these things still. And then the dread hits you, and then the anxiety, and then the excitement again. It's a fun process of whirlwind of emotions. And my digestive tract is paying the price of all these emotions. So,
as someone who just did this recently, all I can say is not because of the alcohol, but just because of the day, it flies by. It's a blur, and you're saying hi to so many people. So just take it all in. I mean, at the time of recording, can you believe a month ago we were at my welcome reception?
that's wild.
A month ago today. And
a
month ago tomorrow
today, we'll both be married.
Yeah. 2 out of 3 on the show. I mean, we're getting there.
Believe me, I was up north with my girlfriend's family all this whole past week, and there were some questions coming. I'm like, not soon, but it's coming.
It's coming. It's happening. You're still young. You and Grace are still very young, so you got time. Farbod and I are starting to, the gray hair starts to settle in.
Yeah, they're coming on the sides a little bit. Yeah,
couple here. Yeah.
By the way, Jace, you waste no time until you dox a significant other.
Oh my gosh, I did it again. I gotta stop. All 7 listeners are just there. They know now. 3 of them are here.
Flooding into her DMs now.
Sorry about the Jalen Rayners.
Yeah, all the Texas Tech fans. This guy doesn't know anything.
Well,
they can't say tortilla, right? So
tortilla. Yeah, the sanctioned noisemakers of Oklahoma State too. We're gonna get to all of that. Like I said, Big 12 Media Days just happened. Big 12 is a really fascinating conference this year. There's a lot of teams that I think I said it before we hit record. There's a lot of teams that you're like, they could be really good, but are they like good enough to be playoff caliber, win a playoff game? We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of conversations to get to. Make sure you are following us on Flag for Discussion on YouTube. Spelt out. Jesus, why do I have the jitters today? At Flag for Discussion spelt out on YouTube. At Flag for Discussion on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We're also F4 Discussion on Twitter and Flag 4 Discussion on TikTok. That was one of my rockier ones, but that's all right. The Big 12 started out media days with Brett Yormark, the commissioner, giving his State of the Union, State of the Conference address at the beginning. And they went through a litany of topics. The first and foremost topic that they talked about was how the Big 12 will now have a new jersey sponsor and conference sponsor. Monster Energy will be coming in, paying the conference $20 million annually, I think. Let me pull up the number just to make sure I'm 100% right. Yeah, they're going to be paying the conference $20 million to basically have Monster Energy on the uniforms of each school's basketball and football jerseys, as well as on the courts, I think on their basketball courts. each school will earn about $1 million annually from Monster Energy. And now Monster Energy wants to, the Big 12 has to be known as Monster Energy Big 12 football and Monster Energy Big 12 basketball. Look, we knew this was going to happen. Brett Yormark has been like an out of the box thinker as a commissioner, just because he knows he has to get the Big 12 some opportunities that, especially after Texas and Oklahoma left, like their brands themselves may not warrant. They've been talking about private investment, just finding other ways to bring extra money in just to level the playing field that between their schools and the SEC and the Big Ten in terms of their TV contracts. I guess I'll start with you, Logan. What was your like first reaction to Monster Energy Big 12 football?
I mean, a couple reactions. One, I mean, jokingly, if this announcement would have came a few weeks ago, Iowa State would have had Monster Energy drinks in their stadium and arena before beer. So that would have been interesting. But also, it doesn't shock me that this is a move that Brett Yormark wants to do. The more that I thought about it after this announcement, he's not really afraid to do maybe not something new, but something that's a little taboo. Like, yeah, we are going to take last year. They took Iowa State and Kansas State to Ireland and opened the Big 12 season. And Ireland was very welcoming about that. TCU's going back to Ireland this year. In his announcement, also talked about how I believe it's Kansas and Arizona playing a game in Mexico City. So, he's brought some fun to the Big 12 and definitely he knows what the brand is. And if Monster Energy wants to give them some money and, tie their name to the Big 12, then I guess I'm open to it.
I guess my question, Jace, I'll hear your thoughts too. My question is $1 million annually to put a massive logo on your jersey. My question for all the schools and conferences out there is, at what point is it a school decision and at what point is it a conference decision? Because I think schools themselves, maybe depending on the brand, can go out and get a jersey patch sponsor and make $2.5-3 million off of it. Now these schools $1 million is a lot of money, but in the world of college football, it doesn't really affect much. And now your whole conference is branded as the Monster Energy Conference.
It felt like a good deal for Monster. Like you get to have football and basketball
100%.
On all of that stuff. That getting the naming rights to the regular seasons for basketball and football also is a good deal for them. I think you could probably break out the deal and say there's a handful of teams in the Big 12 who could have gotten more money for a jersey sponsor. But I also think there are some teams in the conference who this is probably on par, maybe more than they would have gotten from a jersey sponsor. And to me, I think this is a step in the right direction. If you're Yormark, it might not be the right answer, but it's at least him thinking we got to figure out a way to bring in more money, increase our branding, and keep pace with the Big Ten, keep pace with the SEC. Let's keep or step above the ACC. And it's these kind of decisions that prove to your conference, like I'm fighting for you, I'm trying, we're trying to figure it out. And sometimes like action like this, is it the best action? Could you gotten a better deal? Maybe, but it's proof that he cares. It's proof that he's trying. And I think sometimes that means more than just sitting back and doing nothing. I also think it's kind of a landmark decision. Like this could be a decision that then someone says, well, what about the other Big 12 sports? Let's bring in some money and maybe we'll target the smaller ones as a smaller company. I think it opens up the door for a little bit more, and it opens up the door if you're a company looking to get into college athletics. This proves, hey, the Big 12 is willing to listen. They're willing to hear us out. They're clearly open to ideas. So if you have a good idea, the Big 12 could also benefit from that. So the deal itself might not be the most exciting or maybe the best deal for some of these teams, but I do think it's proof that there's care and there's effort into making the Big 12 a bigger name, a bigger brand, bringing in more money, which is always a good sign.
And Brett Yormark's been like my favorite commissioner in the last couple of years, just because he's fighting the same uphill battle the Jim Phillips of the ACC is fighting. Like, how do we stay on par with the Big Ten, the SEC? So we can have the same amount of negotiation power, or at least close to the same amount? How do we have branding? How do we match at least close to what their TV deals are, just to keep ourselves alive as a P4 conference? How do we do that? So, and he's, like I said, he's experimented with a lot. He's talked about like maybe bringing in private investment, finding money outside of traditional college football realm. So I agree with you, Jace. I think if this is just a precedent, that's good. I will say on a podcast platform, I'm going to make the decision for us, Jace, that we're not going to call it Monster Energy Big 12 football until Monster decides to sponsor us. I've seen so many podcasters on Twitter saying, why would I call it that? They're not paying me anything. It's the Big 12. But there's, in Brett Yormark's conversations, in Brett Yormark's soliloquies, obviously we'll get to Texas Tech. He also, last year, I think the biggest, most important question about the Big 12, and we'll answer this as we keep breaking it down. Last year in his state of the conference presser, he basically was asked about parity in the conference. Like, there's jokes that the Big 12 is the 3.5 point conference. Like, doesn't matter which teams match up, the spread's going to be 3.5. It doesn't matter how good one team is, how bad one team is. The Big 12 is just they're all so close in the great grand scheme of things. Now, we saw Texas Tech elevate themselves to a point where they made the college football playoff, made it to the quarterfinal, semifinal, whatever, got shut out in that game. So obviously they still have to elevate themselves. Brett Yormark, in his state of the conference last year, said parity is a really important thing to have in sports, and parity is a very important thing to have in your conference. But his vision for the conference down the road is to have 1 to 2 to 3 teams elevate themselves past the rest of the conference, so they can not just represent the Big 12 in bowl games, but represent the Big 12 in playoff games, national championship games. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's happened with Texas Tech. I think the biggest question is, 1 year after that conversation, are we any closer to having two to three teams in the Big 12 elevating themselves past the rest of the conference, becoming legitimate year in, year out? One of these three teams, two of these three teams are going to be fighting the Big 10, the SEC, ACC big dogs in the playoff.
I think it's looking like we're on that track. I would say Texas Tech and BYU financially are up to par with a lot of those schools. And we've seen it. BYU was able to retain almost their entire football roster back this season. They've only lost a couple transfer starters the last few years. Basketball, that BYU has been very strong in NIL. They've brought in a lot of talent. Obviously, they were able to get Dybonsa, which doesn't usually happen with BYU basketball. Those two teams, I think, are financially on the right track and even on the field on the right track. Last year, they were the two best teams in the conference, it appeared. BYU obviously just missing out on the playoff. This season, going into the football year, it looks like BYU and Texas Tech are kind of in that upper tier, and everyone else is kind of looking up at them again. So back-to-back years of having two teams sitting at the top is always a good sign of building that. They're recruiting at that level now. They're putting in the money in the portal at that level now. It probably just comes with a little bit more time to build that roster up and to build it competitively beyond your conference. So I do think they're positioning themselves well in that regard. And then for Big 10 hoop or Big 12 hoops, they've had so many elite teams for so long. It just feels like they just need to see one go in. Like, they just need to see one team win a championship. Again, it's been a few years now. But, I mean, they still have Baylor. They still have Kansas. Like, it's not like they haven't won any in the last 5-10 years. So I think Big 12 hoops is there. Big 12 football is, I think, kind of really approaching that with BYU and with Texas Tech.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of what you had mentioned before. Yeah, there was a few years ago, Baylor had won the national championship in basketball. But the Big 12, in terms of football, is kind of hurting. Texas Tech, I was heavily rooting for them. Sorry, guys, but against Oregon, because they need, it hasn't been since TCU made their run a few years ago since the Big 12 has won a college football playoff game. And Yormark has hitched his wagon to, 16 teams. I'm honestly surprised that he hasn't hitched it to 24 for the college football playoff. But the conference that outside of Texas Tech, I think if BYU showed a little bit more in that conference championship game, maybe they would have been able to squeeze in and knock out one of the other G5 schools. But Texas Tech was just so far and above better than them that it ultimately made BYU look like a bad team. It was the same case for, hate to keep bringing them up, but Iowa State in 2024, where they got their doors blown off by Arizona State. And it just proved that even the second best team in the Big 12 was not ready to, get another spot in the playoff.
I think that's the debate, though, because I guess the question is less of are we closer in terms of just because Texas Tech made it to the playoff and lost to Oregon? It's more, how close are we in terms of like changing the hearts and minds of people that like this is possible in the Big 12. This is possible that it's going to be a regular thing because look, BYU is an excellent football team, really good along the lines of scrimmage. They have skill, they have a good quarterback. Texas Tech, same thing. Will Hammond, he gets a lot of shit because of the Sorsby situation. If he didn't get hurt last year, Joey McGuire was on a podcast earlier this week, and he said there's a chance that we wouldn't have even brought in Sorsby because if Will Hammond was healthy through the year, through the playoff last year, even if we would have lost to Oregon and Baron Morton didn't start that, Will Hammond did, there's a chance that we wouldn't have even brought in another quarterback. Now, that's probably tongue in cheek. We all saw the game against Oregon. We saw, even if it was Baron Morton, they needed to elevate on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense had guys that could compete with the Indianas, the Oregons, their linebacker room, their defensive line. Texas Tech was ready to compete for a national title last year, and their roster is back up there this year. I think my doubts are, can this conference year in, year out, here, you bring Iowa State up, I'll bring Oregon up. One of the biggest transition points where we were like, oh, Oregon's a legit power for us was Oregon used to have to go around you. They used to have to scheme you up. They used to have to be faster than you, have trick plays, and they did that really well. But now they can go through you. There's not a lot of teams in the Big 12 that I think can go through you, if that makes sense. Like they're not positioned along the lines of scrimmage or with quarterback talent to do that necessarily.
BYU seemed like they were close, and we'll get it. They play Notre Dame October 17th this year, so we'll get that test. And there's a couple other big matchups early in the year in the Big 12, but that's a good one to measure up. Can you go through an elite team that's good in the trenches? BYU was close, but to your point, like that, you have to be able to go through somebody. You also have to be able to go over somebody. And BYU last year, both games against Texas Tech, could not go over Texas Tech. And Texas Tech in that Big 12 championship game, corners were pressed, safeties were 5-10 yards downfield, like linebackers were basically on the line of scrimmage, and they just said, we know you want to run the ball, we know you only want to throw short passes, beat us deep. And BYU didn't. They didn't do it successfully, and they didn't really even try to do it, and their offense just looked abysmal. So you got to be able to do both. And to answer your older question of what has to happen to change people's minds about the Big 12, we've talked about this a lot as former Pac-12 people. We still always root for the conference, but the truth is, like, the majority of college football fans are not going to respect you or your conference until a national championship is had. And whether that's fair or not is a whole nother debate. Yeah, a couple. And I obviously, I don't think that's a fair measurement, but whether you like it or not, that's kind of the case for the majority of college football fans. You have to win titles, especially like you have to beat like an SEC school to get there. You have to beat a Big Tens. They're going to want to see beat Ohio State, to beat Georgia, to prove that you're good. Again, I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's the truth. So a Big 12 team is going to have to make a national championship run where they do beat Ohio State on the way there, or they do beat Georgia, or they do beat Alabama. Like, they're going to have to navigate something like that to change the majority of minds. And that's hard to do. Like you said, I think Texas Tech was right there last year. I think that they were positioning themselves to be that again this year. We'll see how these distractions that have occurred in the offseason do or don't impact them. BYU, I think, is right there. They've returned so much talent. And I think the big question for me is, can they throw over you? Can they prove some downfield threat? Bear Bachmeier was good at everything last year except for dropping back, sitting in the pocket, and delivering a throw downfield, something he couldn't do. And I think we can all probably agree, you're never going to win a national championship, let alone big-time playoff games, if your quarterback can't do a 3-step drop and throw 15 yards downfield. So those, like, if they fix those things, like, I think BYU has LJ Martin, and they have the O-line to, like, slow a game down when they get a lead. They have the ability to pound the rock. I think defensively, they have the ability to at least slow down big offenses. Texas Tech, again, like I said, we'll see how the offseason impacted them. They're close. I think they're close. I think it's going to take one of those two teams this year, or a really big-time surprise team, to make that deep run, and they still might be a year or two out.
To your point, like, when I'm looking around the conference, there are aspects from a lot of teams that I'm like, okay, that could work. TCU offensive, defensive line, at least bodies that they have, they can match up against the best of the best. Now, can the quarterback they brought in, Jaden Craig from Harvard, really elevate themselves? The thing that needs to happen in the Big 12, and Logan, I want to get your take because the school that your alma mater, your school, it's after Matt Campbell left, it was at least publicly leaked or told out there that Matt Campbell's staff had to create their own collective. Like the money situation at Iowa State was already dire enough that they weren't able to, like, they didn't have the massive boosters to set it up for them. Now, the thing is, in the SEC and the Big Ten, sure, there are levels to how much every team's invested, but I can guarantee you there's not that much difference between Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, and your Big Ten team here, or Alabama, Georgia, and Mizzou. Like, I think Auburn, I think all of those schools, they're not $30 million apart in terms of investment. And that's the crazy part to me, because that would lead you to believe the Big Ten and the SEC would have more parity than the Big 12, because the Big 12 has Texas Tech. Here's also a question on top of that. Sorry, you know how my brain works. If I asked you to pick one conference champion today across all of the conferences, guaranteed to win, is there a more surefire pick than Texas Tech this year? In the Big Ten, it could be Ohio State, Oregon, USC's looking good. My like ACC, who knows, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, to answer your most recent question, it's definitely the safe answer is Texas Tech, especially after just looking at how much they've brought back on that defense and, some studs in the transfer portal. There's no reason to think that they still won't be far and above, the best team in the Big 12. Whether Will Hammond's starting week 1 or not, that was something that Joey McGuire hinted on is, everything's on schedule for him. Hopefully he is the starter week 1. If not, I'm sure they could have, I'm blanking on his name, but the Tulsa transfer win them a couple games. And, secondly, just to talk about the resources that Iowa State had to go through and whatnot, and I'm sure some other Big 12 teams, they're kind of in the same situation. Yeah, starting our own collective, and it's honestly surprising that they were able to keep, if Matt Campbell wasn't there and, the players didn't respect him as much, obviously you see how much they respect him because of how many went to Penn State. But yeah, it honestly got to a point where I'm sure Matt was like, hey, my guys trust me, but they need we need something to at least compete and keep these guys, keep the Jalen Knowles, keep the Jaden Higgins, the Rocco Becks, all that. So it was definitely an interesting time, and I'm surprised that they were able to keep that many people.
The next question, though, from like a Big 12 standpoint is, actually, Jace, I want to hear your take on the conference champions. Like, is it a problem that right now you could probably pick Texas Tech and feel pretty good about it?
Yormark wants to have that, as we mentioned earlier, he wants to have that upper echelon tier. So I think he would say, no, I don't think it's a problem. I think he thinks it's a good thing. And because even when you said Texas Tech, my immediate thought was, I don't hate BYU in this scenario.
Right.
And my immediate thought too is the ACC. I see Miami as tier 1, and then like there's no one in the tier 2, and then tier 3 is like Louisville, Virginia. So Miami was my answer there, and I think that's unhealthy when it's not necessarily we have such a good team or better than everybody, but we just don't have anyone in that that can compete with one team. Where I think the Big 12 is in a decent spot where they do have really good teams, and Texas Tech, BYU, in my head, I just see them above everyone else. But I'd see a team like Houston. I think Houston would be the second best team in the ACC, but they're probably 3 to 5 in the Big 12 this year. Arizona State's a team that's people are looking at. No one's really talking about them. They're kind of being ranked as like 6 to 10 in the Big 12. Even that's a team that I think could be top 4 in the ACC. So I do think that, yes, Texas Tech and BYU are by far the favorites. Tech probably won, especially I've pulled up their schedule here. And now I'm looking at the schedule. It's pretty much a built-in 11 wins. But I think it's not because, the conference stinks. I think it's just Texas Tech is getting to that level where it's hard to pick against them. It's the same way Farbo and I joke every year Ohio State is like over under 10.5 wins. It's not because the Big Ten stinks. It's just because Ohio State's that good. You expect 11 wins. Texas Tech's kind of hitting that point. Yes, a little bit weaker of a schedule, but I think it's a good sign. Miami would be my pick for safest conference champion. I think the ACC is pretty weak outside of them. But Texas Tech, in a good way, is not my pick because I think there are some competitive teams up there with.
So sticking with tech, go ahead, Logan.
Oh, no. Well, so a lot of good value picks when it comes to the sports book for Big 12 champions. I've got some money on Houston.
Like that.
Don't be afraid to throw some money on the North Texas Cowboys down there in Stillwater.
Dude, yeah.
They're going to be fun. There's going to be some fun teams to watch, especially Houston. Don't sleep on Houston this year.
So before we get to the odds, let's stick with Texas Tech. So Logan, you mentioned the Will Hammond if he's ready week 1 thing. I heard Joey McGuire talking about it on a podcast after his Big 12 presser, and he basically said, so earlier this spring he made a comment saying we just need him for week 3. And that was taken out of context. He didn't necessarily mean like he's not going to be ready till week 3. Apparently, like this is Joey's words to Andy and Ari. Apparently, when he said that, Will Hammond went to the trainers saying, something wrong with me? Like, am I not going to be ready week 1? But Will Hammond, basically, if you look at their schedule, they play Abilene Christian and Oregon State week 1 and 2. After
don't
that,
overlook Core Vegas, man.
Vegas.
You got to go to Core Vegas on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday late night. Don't overlook that.
No, absolutely not. But for week 3, they play Houston, and that's when the Big 12 play starts for Texas Tech. So that's more so what he meant. Is like, we need him to start week 3 so we can start a run in the Big 12. That in the end of it, that's all that matters for them, so they can win the conference, make the playoff. Brett Yormark was asked about the Texas Tech situation in a very strangely worded question. He was asked to repeat it, the reporter. He repeated it verbatim too, which was really weird. And he was basically asked, like, how do Texas Tech fans, how should they expect you that you support them? How should they expect you that you support them on par with the rest of the conference when you guys, it feels like you're out to get them? And he brought in like the Texas Tech tortilla thing, and then he brought in how Oklahoma State had got a exception for their noisemakers. And he's like, why doesn't Texas Tech and why don't their fans feel supported by the conference? And all Brett Yormark said was, let me start off by saying I appreciate the question. I appreciate other questions that are probably going to come forth today. Today's not the time to address the issue. Today's about celebrating the upcoming football season, celebrating our schools. My one comment to Brett Yormark, that day was the day to answer that question. That's the entire reason media days happen. That's the entire reason you have those press conferences. And that is the time. But like, if that's what you want to say, that's not cool. All he had to say, in my opinion, was, I appreciate the question. Currently, the Big 12 is in a lawsuit with the university you're talking about, and we would love to address this when that's resolved. Like, that's all you have to say. Is like, but he like just shot it down and didn't make anybody feel bad.
Yeah, just in my shouldn't say past life, but as a journalist at Iowa State and then a year out after college, I was telling you guys before, I just kind of got some secondhand embarrassment from him on mispronouncing tortillas, or as he had called them, tortillas, which was weird because he said it wrong the first time and then right like 5 words later in his question. Both times he was asking a question, but anyway, it hurts me because I wish that there was a better question asked when it comes to that. Yormark's probably going to turn down any question that involves Sorsby, but the fact that it was so poorly worded, and then he wants to ask how he thinks Texas Tech fans will feel supported. Honestly, I think a better question would have just kind of been, Mr. Commissioner, you're in kind of a unique situation, not only as you're the first one going through this, where you have an active player that's betting on his own games, but no other commissioners ever really had to go through this at the college level. Ask something along the lines of that, but
right,
it's neither here nor there. But to what you were saying as well too, also not a great half answer from Yormark either, no matter how badly it was worded.
There's no way his PR staff told him that was the best thing to say, because there's no way they also didn't expect the Sorsby's question.
Yeah. No, I didn't get it. And even in Joey McGuire's, and you had hit on this too earlier when we were talking, Joey McGuire didn't essentially or do anything wrong, but he wasn't even really asked about it either.
Yeah, no, I think, Jace, you and I, we've been staunch supporters of Joey McGuire. He's a wonderful coach. He's really fun to like just hear at pressers and talk. He's very forthcoming. Players love him. And we hope he doesn't become like a scapegoat of Texas Tech with all the billions that they're pouring into there and saying like, oh, Joey McGuire is the problem. We hope that doesn't happen because I genuinely like the coach himself. There is a conversation to have of, I think as USA, I mean, maybe you're not a USA fan, Logan, but as US national soccer team fans, we kind of felt how Texas Tech fans felt at the beginning of this week when they suspended the suspension of Fowler and Balogun to play in the game, and the whole world, the whole country was against us, and we were just sitting here like, what? And Texas Tech fans felt that, and they still feel that. Like, there is like us against the world. Joey McGuire, for what it's worth, the 21-minute Twitter video that the administration put out, like supporting the kid, that wasn't Joey McGuire's decision. That wasn't that there's when the president and the AD are in a room with the head coach, the president and AD decided they needed to put that out, not Joey McGuire. So I think Joey McGuire's just ready. Like, maybe obviously he would probably prefer to have Brendan Sorsby play this year. We don't have to rehash the whole Sorsby situation, but I think more than anything, he's probably just ready to get back to football.
Yeah, Joey McGuire strikes me as a guy that doesn't want to do any of this politicking, doesn't want to do any of the drama. Like, I'm sure if this was a Joey McGuire, if he got to lead Texas Tech's reaction to everything, I think this would have been nipped in the butt months ago. I think this would have been, hey, like, the drama's not worth it. I like our backup quarterback, Will Hammond, who's a capable starter, as we know. Let's just deal with it the right way the first time and move on. Obviously, as we know, when it comes to decisions that go on with football programs, there's a lot of people that have opinions. And usually the opinion that matters most is the one with the biggest checkbook. And unfortunately, that's just not Joey McGuire in this case. So he's kind of just playing second fiddle to whoever's pulling the strings behind the scenes, probably a guy that does with oil and his name's an alliteration, who wanted him to play. And so he's probably just say, okay, fine. Because this whole time, every time Joey McGuire's around these conversations, he looks tired. He looks disinterested. And when he has to say something, you can tell he's delivering it half-assed. Because I've seen him on podcasts. I've seen him in interviews talk about high school football in Texas. And that's something he's really passionate about. And the way he talks about that versus we just want to support this kid, like, he's no heart in this. And I'm sure the message from him to his team is something along the lines of, this is the team we're playing with. Like, these are the guys that are going to play. Like, we still have the same aspirations we do with or without the kid. And I'm sure for him, he just hates the distraction. Also from the sense of, like, I'm trying to get these 50 whatever kids focused to play college football on Saturdays. And you asking these questions, our administration dragging this thing on, these 20-minute Twitter videos of us trying to defend this obviously bad decision to the rest of the world. None of this is going to bode well for wins and losses. Like, let's just eat the loss and let's move forward. I don't want to say I feel bad for Joe McGuire because he's, going along with it, but I don't get the sense that he's enjoying what's going on with Texas Tech. And I have a strong feeling if it was his decision, this would have been handled a 180 from the way it's gone the last 3 months.
And two quotes that he had. Well, one was shared adversity brings you closer, which I like that. That was good. Yep. And there was an interview with Terrence Carter Jr., the tight end, the stud out of there. And they said that they've been going forward with the what's next mentality. So I think as a team, they've kind of responded pretty well. And with it being the second week of July, they're like, we just got to go. But, you got to put the football down and we're just ready.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question now is, now it's football. Like, in 3 weeks, training, fall camp starts, 3-4 weeks, fall camp starts. That happens for 2 to 3 weeks. Then we got first game of the year. I know we've talked about the Big 12 championship odds. I know we talked about all of that. Do you believe Joey McGuire in him saying, if Will Campbell didn't get hurt last year, that they probably wouldn't have gone out and gotten Brendan Sorsby?
That's tough because it just feels like something so easily he's able to.
Will Hammond, not Will Campbell.
Will Campbell. That'd be good. That'd be good to see. But no, I think it's an easy thing for him to say. But also, you look back and Hammond was super talented, and McGuire brought it up. He played so well in the way that he led as well. He said that you could tell from other players in the Utah game when he came in, respected him. They were excited to see him out there. I remember that. It was a very thrilling game. And, another good thing to see was he had also mentioned that he had received texts from, Kenny Dillingham and Kalani Sitake during when this whole situation was going down, kind of supporting him. So, love to have the stand-up coaches in the conference.
Jace, what do you think?
I don't, it's tough because right now Joe McGuire has said, oh, he's on track. This is what we expected and he's ready to go. But then at the same time, if that's true, then why would you go out and get a quarterback? So it feels like they're just kind of going to say whatever's the right thing to say to give your current QB the most confidence. Because at the end of the day, it was clear in that, obviously Hammond was hurt, but it was clear in the Oregon game, the quarterback play at Texas Tech was by far the biggest gap between being a national championship team and being a team that can't score a point in a playoff game. So if Will Hammond was if you think Will Hammond was enough to overcome that entire gap that was Baron Morton and the Oregon defense, then sure, you don't go out and get one. But I think even with Will Hammond, who I do think was a better quarterback than Baron Morton, I still don't know if that would have been enough. Also, like I said earlier, the guy with the biggest checkbook tends to make the decisions at the end of the day. And I have a feeling that the Sorsby bringing him in was less Joey McGuire and more checkbook wanting a big time QB. And when they say, hey, I'm willing to shell out all this cash only if you go get this guy, you don't say no to that. So I think whether Joey thinks that or not, it doesn't really matter because I think Sorsby was going to be brought in regardless of what Joey may or may not.
Like Texas Tech fans feel like there's the world against them. They feel like they're getting hated on at an irrational rate because of what happened with Brendan Sorsby. But what I don't think they realize is that $5 million they paid him, if they brought in Sam Leavitt, they would have been right there if LSU brought in Brendan Sorsby and this was happening at LSU. Now, Cody Campbell has done a lot of great things for Texas Tech and a lot of great things for college football. Like, I don't want to let that be forgotten. But at the same time, he's come out and said, like, they're hating us because they don't want as part of their club. They don't want as part of their, like, super team club or whatever. No, I think if Brendan Sorsby happened to Ohio State, if Brendan Sorsby happened to Georgia, if Brendan Sorsby happened to LSU, it would have been 10 times the size of vitriol that Texas Tech got. It's not a Texas Tech thing. It was the reaction to it. And now that they're ready to go on to the next level with Will Hammond, look, the roster's still set. The roster's still ready to at least win the Big 12. And what I don't fully believe that they, even if it was Cody Campbell, biggest guy with the biggest check driven, I think that Oregon game proved to everybody on the defensive side of the ball with David Bailey and Lee Hunter, Jacob Rodriguez, they can play with anybody. They held Oregon to 23 points, and like for what it's worth, that was a lot of that was it was like 16 for most of the game. On the offensive side of the ball, they just couldn't get a push. They couldn't get their running game sometimes worked and then just cracked. Their passing game was awful. They had to go out and elevate their offensive game. And that's what the Brendan Sorsby investment was. And they brought in the wrong guy. They couldn't, it's hard in the transfer portal. It's speed dating. You don't have a lot of time to vet him. And they found themselves in the situation they are. But I don't think it I honestly think, and going back to the odds, I think their value is pretty good to win the conference this year. Going to Colorado real quick, and we don't have to spend that. I mean, we'll see how much time we want to spend on this. But Colorado, fascinating situation. I think for me, the disappointing part of Colorado, and I'll try not to sound like a broken record here, is Deion Sanders was like, he was going to change hearts and minds about how people viewed Colorado. He was going to change how recruiting was ever done at Colorado. A guy like Deion Sanders should come in and with his gravitas, guys would take discounts to play for him just because of how cool it is, how fun it is, how he's surrounding the team with former NFL Hall of Famers, all that and the other. Obviously, they had a big year 2 years ago with Shedeur and Travis in their senior years. Now, last year they took a step back. Some of that, I'm sure, was the team just not being good. I honestly think a lot of that was Deion was undergoing cancer treatments, and even if he doesn't want to admit it, I doubt he was as focused because Pat Shurmur was their OC, and there were multiple times that Juju Lewis or Caden Salter or whoever was their quarterback, that they went through like 5 last year, looked around like, is that really the call that they're sending down? Like, why are we running this play right now? They hated on Pat Shurmur, so they fired Pat Shurmur. They bring in Brendan Marion, who was the head coach at Sac State. He runs the go-go offense. He's been the OC at like UNLV, Pitt, all over the place, all over the country, and it's worked everywhere he's been. Now, Dion basically has had a lot to say this week at Media Days. He said, this time last year when I came in here, I had shorts on under and I had a hoodie because I had lost a large amount of weight. I didn't want a lot of people to know. I was smiling, styling, profiling, doing my best I could do to falsify how I was really feeling. So it's a different day. Ain't no shorts up in here. It's my boxers, prime boxers. I'm back. I'm healthy. I got my thought process back. On Juju Lewis, who's going to be their quarterback this year, he's grown tremendously. I don't think he has a choice to grow, basically to grow with Brendan Marion. I don't think he has a choice. I'm not the only one pushing him. Teammates are pushing him. He's pushing himself. I think he's grown tremendously, and he's going to have to consistently grow because we have some men on the team that has an expectation of not only winning, but we have some receivers that has an expectation on continuing to do what they've done before they got here. Long story short, Colorado is entering year 4 or 5 of prime. If I told you after their rise earlier on that we would be asking another, will Dion be able to rebuild it again? Kind of, and not that he fully rebuilt it, but like, will he be able to bring him back again? I think they're at kind of a crossroads here, right?
No doubt. I mean, it's in it. Yeah. Year 4, 16-21 record. If you take out that year with Travis Hunter and Shadur, record looks a lot worse. The recruitment, I think you had mentioned it, has changed for them, and that's good. But we're going to have to see some real development from these players at Colorado because it seems like, once they get there, they're just stunted.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. They're recruiting. This is the first cycle that this upcoming recruiting class. So we won't see the impacts until next year at the earliest. But they have like 20 kids in their recruiting class. Dion's never had more than 14, 13 because he's wanted to prioritize the transfer portal so much. But now that, like, maybe it's just a shift in financials that are available to them. They just hired a new AD. Maybe it's a shift in focus and attention. Like, we can't just rely on the portal. But I'm wondering where like the change of heart went. Like this past spring game was the first spring game in the prime era that wasn't packed. It just feels like the excitement is not there, as in they're more of a normal college football team.
It kind of felt like they were running a pyramid scheme in the sense that it sounds great on paper, it looks flashy from the outside, but once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is ridiculous, this is stupid, it's not going to work, it's not sustainable. And I think it proved true. They had some flashy names. They had that 9-3 year with Travis and Shadur. But once the flashiness, the sexiness goes away, once the big NIL original investment goes away, you realize I'm not being developed. I don't think we have good supporting coaching staffs. We have a terrible offensive game plan where we're calling random plays. My quarterback doesn't like my coordinator. I think people looked around and they're like, what is actually this program is going nowhere. Like, we're not being developed. So I don't think we're recruiting well. The money's not being used properly. And also, like, I don't love the Coach Prime's commentary about Juju Lewis there. I don't think I like the idea of putting the pressure on the quarterback saying, we have wide receivers that don't want to digress, so it's on you to make sure they don't. I don't know if I like the mentality of pinning position groups on each other or putting the success of one position group on the back of a different one, saying, well, if these guys don't do well, that's your fault. I'm not sure that's a great coaching strategy to begin with. So I say all this to say, I think the reason why the spring game attendance has been piss poor, and I know a few Colorado fans who, beginning of prime era, they talked as if they were Nick Saban, like 7 straight rings. I haven't heard a peep from a single one of them in 2 years. Not like they don't wear their Colorado gear anymore. You don't see the Colorado hoodies come out. I just think people kind of realized it was kind of phony. It was fraudulent. Now, was it because he was, I don't want to discount the fact that he had gone through what he went through and say that, oh, he was a phony the whole time. Maybe this really did play into it. And this year will be a chance for him to prove, like, look, I was just unhealthy and not able to give it the attention. But regardless, as of now, the way it's went, I do think they're trending downhill fast. And this is the year where if Colorado has another 3-9 year and Juju Lewis doesn't look good and the program's not looking good, Colorado's got to tell Coach Prime, like, sorry, man, but I think it's time. Yeah.
That's the debate. Is there like a referendum on his staff of, hey, you got to start bringing in high school kids. You got to start building a foundation. It's year 4. This is unacceptable. Part of that is also, I think the thing that frustrates me is I haven't been as much of a Prime hater as like the rest of the world, with like his antics and whatnot. Sometimes I just think they're funny. Sometimes I think they're good fodder for us. So I sometimes I encourage, I support it. My concern with Dion and Colorado right now is that we bring up the Travis and Shador team, but that team also had Jimmy Horn. That team also had LaJohntay Wester. That team, like last year, not Caden Salter, the Jordan Seaton, the offensive lineman, they have they have had good players. It's just when they brought in Jordan Seaton, they didn't really bring in anybody else in their recruiting class. It was here, offensive line, left tackle fixed. That doesn't fix anything. That just fixes your left tackle problem. I guess like Prime used to always say like, you better get me now because you're just wait and see what I have coming. Juju Lewis, for what it's worth, when he played, his arm and talent showed, but he was a true freshman. He was a kid that was recruited by the USCs of the world, Indiana's of the world, Cursignetti, Indiana, Ohio State, like Oregon, the best teams in the country. He was recruited by. So there's talent there. Now with Brendan Marion, I'm interested to see how that talent shows itself, how their offense scores. I hope at least like last year you watched Colorado's offense. For what it's worth, they got blown out a couple times, but there were a lot of 1-score games in there. At least 1-score games that turned into 2-score games in the last 10 minutes. Colorado played Texas Tech and Utah. Like they got blown out by Utah. They played the best teams in the country close. So my question is, if they are able to become more organized as an offense, are they going to now be a more sophisticated team that could actually compete, or is their best case scenario 5-7 this year?
Right. I mean, this is something that any coach would say that's kind of struggling, but he did say that this is the best coaching staff that he has had in his coaching career. And, I also think that, looking back now, it might have just been beneficial if Dion had any experience coaching, not being the head coach. I had to look back because I had forgotten if he was a coordinator anywhere. No, he went straight to, was it Jackson State? And then after, being a high school head coach, and then gets the job at Colorado. So I hate to say this, and that, he may just not still know what he's doing. He's still figuring out, but he's falling upwards. So,
well, the point with Dion was never to know what he's doing. The point is for him to have like he's the point person.
Yeah.
And you just hire the right people, bring him in, and because he will bring the players in. The problem of the last 3 years was that he hasn't brought enough of the good players in.
Maybe his role would be better served as like a recruiting GM or something along those lines, kind of as we've seen with like Ron Rivera or other positions like that. Just because when it comes to being a head coach, as we've talked about on the show so many times, you're a CEO. Like you have not only like is player acquisition important, NIL acquiring that important in marketing, but you also have to have a hand in the offense and make sure that that's going the right way. And you have to have a hand in the defense. You have to have a hand in special teams. You have to retain your talent. As much as they brought in so much of their talent, a lot like Travis Hunter and that crowd, all of them left early to the NFL as soon as they got the chance. Jordan Seaton, he's playing at LSU now. Omarion Miller, who came there for Dion, looked like a stud. He's playing at Arizona State next year. So there's clearly like a lot of gaps that he's just not filling as a head coach. And it does make me wonder, would he have been better served? And maybe he still has time. Is he better served in a different role that's maybe not a head coach? Because I don't think he's an idiot. And I don't think he's a bad football mind. I think he has a great mind for football. And I think he does understand, like, it sounds weird to say, like, he understands young kids in the sense of like football players and what it's like to be recruited highly. I think he gets all of that. And I think he is relatable. I just think a head coach might not be the best use of his knowledge and skill set. And maybe that's something Colorado tries to figure out, or maybe that's post-Colorado, Dion figures out himself and then becomes a gem somewhere. Maybe he goes to like an Alabama as a recruiting type personnel, and then all of a sudden now we see Dion flourish because that's just a better role for him. We'll see how that grows.
I just can't see Dion doing that. I mean, why would he? What need does he have if he's not the head man of an operation, right? Like he's got his money. He's fine. He just beat cancer. Like, he's fine.
See,
But
that almost
no,
makes me think it would be more likely, because if you're old and you're rich and you've just beat cancer, I don't know if you have the energy to be a head coach, but why not just go have some fun recruiting with a school that has an unlimited NIL money and see what you could drum up?
that is part of the problem of one of the reasons he hasn't brought in enough high school players. I think he falls in love with a player every cycle. It was Juju Lewis. It was Jordan Seaton. It was Travis Hunter when he was at Jackson State. But that's not enough, right? And he said, like, I'm never going to go on home visits, because do you realize, and part of it's understandable. He was like, do you realize how many players who will never actually, who are like deceiving me, saying that they want to go to Colorado, just want me to come over for a dinner? Like, do you realize how many players want to waste my time because they want Prime in their living room, or like want a picture of Prime at their high school? So that is one of the reasons he doesn't go on like home visits. He does recruit, but I think more than anything, it's his handling of his staff and recruiting, because he hires Sean Lewis. They have some success year one. Then the team like gets destroyed by Oregon, gets destroyed by a bunch of teams in the Pac-12. He demotes Sean Lewis, who was a good OC, and like they go back and forth with trying to figure out their offense for 3 years after that. Pat Shurmur was not a good NFL coach, not a good college OC, and he just kept riding with him. Now with Brendan Marion, hopefully it's different. Anything else on Colorado before we move to the next team?
Mm-mm.
All right. Logan, before we go to the rest of the discussion questions, I want to give you an Iowa State corner on this show. Hopefully they become good, so we actually make this regular. But like, if they're not, you can just come on and talk Big 12 football with us. Iowa State, Matt Campbell leaves, takes most of the whole team with him. We already covered the fact that they have very little, like, they're hurting for money. The well is fairly dry. Whatever. They bring in Jalen Rayner to be their quarterback. Right now, going into spring, Jimmy Rogers was doing the whole coach thing of it's a QB battle. We'll see what happens with him and Zane. But in media days, he said Jalen going into fall camp is their QB1. What kind of expectations do you have for Iowa State? I mean, they have the worst odds in the conference to win the conference.
Gosh, I mean, well, I have their over. Their over's at 5.5. So I'm hoping for a bowl game. Now I can also see a world where they do go 4-8 or 5-7. And if the season ends well, then I'm just looking for some confidence that at the end of the year, yeah, Jimmy Rogers, that's our guy. We can hitch our wagon to him. He's already got.
Is there a number for that? Like if you go 2 and think about it like this: if you go 2-9, but like I think at 2-9 you could still see signs that Jimmy Rogers is the guy, but the team's not good. Or like, do you have to go 5-7, 6 and whatever to feel like Jimmy Rogers is your guy? Or
I'll put it at 4-8. 4-8 because you need to win the 2 non-conference games against. It'd be SEMO, and I believe our third game is Bowling Green. Would love to be competitive in the Cyhawk game this year at Kinnick, but I don't know. I'm not too confident about that happening. And then if they can get 2 conference wins as well and be competitive even in some losses. The nice thing for them is they do not have to leave the state of Iowa until I believe it's one of the first 2 weeks of October. They'll have all their non-conference games in the state of Iowa, and then their first 2 Big 12 games, their first one is against Utah, and they're coming to town. So I'll put it at 4-8, 2 conference wins. Would love it, but to your point, yeah, there is maybe a world where 3-9 or 2-10. And you could still have an idea that this is our guy.
I agree with that. I'm looking at the schedule. You don't play Texas Tech, but other than that, you kind of have a gauntlet. You do get Utah. You play at BYU, at Arizona, Oklahoma State, at UCF, Kansas State, at Baylor. None of those are free, chalked-in wins. Those are all pretty solid teams. Good question marks in all of them. So I do see a world where, 3-9 is a competitive 3-9, because a lot of those teams you could, like, if you go at Arizona is a very losable game, but if you lose 27-24 and you look competitive, that's a win in terms of how you view Jimmy Rogers. I think you have a good perspective on this, and I think a lot of Iowa State fans that I've chatted with do as well. I don't think the expectation is anything crazy, and I think people have a fair understanding. He was dealt a really difficult hand. He's taking over a team that was gutted in the transfer portal. He's taking over a team that he kind of had to come in last minute and just figure it all out. I don't think anybody's sitting there thinking, well, he's got all these resources and all this talent that's staying around. So I think to Jimmy Rogers' credit, like, you're kind of playing this season with that chip on your shoulder of, man, people aren't really believing in us or buying into us. And also we don't really have anything to lose. Like, we play at BYU. Nobody's expecting us to go win that game. Nothing to lose. Like, let's go balls to the wall. Whereas, sometimes in the Dave Aranda scenario, you kind of are playing for your life. You kind of are playing for your career. You are playing for a head coaching job. And sometimes some coaches play better in that way. Some coaches don't. On the flip side, I think most coaches do a pretty good job, especially a Washington State guy. They love drumming up upsets. When you got nothing to lose, back against the wall, why not? Let's go out kicking. Jimmy Rogers really good at that at Washington State. They were always a team that, yes, they could lose to anybody, but catch them on the wrong day and they could beat anybody. So hopefully you guys pull out a couple of those games this year.
Well, the thing that we're hanging on is, and he was asked about this too, he had to do the exact same thing last year at Washington State. Whole new staff, bring in a ton of transfer players. And while it was, the Pac-2 and, they played Oregon State twice, they went 6-6. And another thing that Iowa State fans are hanging their hat on is they looked competitive against Ole Miss when they played them, a team that went to the college football playoff. So, and he brought a lot of the talent from Washington State for 2027. I believe the recruiting class is already top 6, at least the top half of the Big 12. So just flipped a wide receiver that was a Houston commit. So love to see that.
I think the question for me is, Matt Campbell, he obviously meant a lot to the program. He obviously did things that have never been done at Iowa State before. And for the decade that he was there, he kept elevating the program. And yes, it was still a window program. There were down years mixed in there. There were up higher years mixed in there. Brock Purdy team for one. But my internal debate right now, and maybe you can shed some light on it. I'm debating, I think Jimmy Rogers is the right guy. I don't think he failed upwards from South Dakota to Washington State to Iowa State. I think he's done really well at everywhere he's been. Granted, he was only at Washington State for a year, but he's done well enough everywhere he's been to prove to other teams, other conferences, other leagues that this could be a guy you want. My question is, did Matt Campbell's impact on Iowa State also have an impact on the future, even if he's gone, leaving them in such a bad spot? Because before Matt Campbell, if you guys won 4 or 5 games, if you made a bowl, that was a really good year. With Matt Campbell, really good years, 10 wins. Now, what I'm wondering is, now that he's gone, left you with nobody, Jimmy Rogers comes in, do you immediately go back to pre-Matt Campbell era, or has he elevated the program enough that despite their financial hardships, despite there being such a gap between what they can pay for and like the next team up in the Big 12, is Jimmy Rogers going to be elevating the program even further, or is he going to have to rebuild from square one?
That's what we're all thinking, right? And that's why you want to see where this team goes this year. That'll set a good, kind of benchmark. But I think at the very least, he doesn't need to be Matt Campbell. He can kind of do his own thing and build up his program. The only thing, or the couple things that really hit me when I was actually sitting right over there when I got the notification that Matt Campbell was going to Penn State, first thing that hit my mind was we were just now starting to get over the University of Iowa when it comes to in-state recruiting. And Jimmy Rogers has had a couple wins along the way already. They have the 4-star tackle out of Carroll, I want to say it is, that was committed to Matt Campbell, decommitted, and now he's committed to Jimmy Rogers at Iowa State. So a couple wins along the way. I think really what's important for him is, you kind of just see where this year takes you and really focus on getting back to maybe not exactly what Matt Campbell was doing, but the things that he did well to get Iowa State where they were at when he left. He was becoming an elite recruiter, not only in the state of Iowa, but in the Midwest, and also utilizing transfer portal to get a Jaden Higgins that was at Eastern Kentucky or wherever he was from. Jordan Travis, who was he was at Princeton, I want to say, and now he's third round pick for the Colts. So don't have to do exactly what he did. He farm your own path,
All right. So now from there, I'm going to give you guys, since we're already an hour into this, I'm going to give you guys a choice, and we're going to talk about 2 or 3 of these, and we'll go on to our QB draft. But you pick from this list: ASU, Utah, Baylor, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Arizona. Let's talk about 2 of those teams or something.
I would be down for Utah and Baylor, but I'm open to other suggestions as well.
Let's do the Utes. I think they're fun. Let's start with the Utes. I think they're a fun conversation. We'll see where that leads us next.
All right. So Utah, obviously Kyle Whittingham leaves. I mean, Utah has had amongst the most sustainable coaching situation for the last 25 years, starting in the Mountain West with Urban. Urban leaves for Florida. Kyle Whittingham takes over. Kyle Whittingham takes them from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 to the Big 12. He's won conference championships. Really, like when we were just talking about Iowa State elevating a program, Kyle Whittingham took Utah from being this like smaller. I mean, I know Urban did good things at Utah, but smaller Mountain West team to, dude, they're a force. They could win the national title if they in 2019, 2018, those teams, the Tyler Huntley teams, the Cam Rising early on teams. Utah's defense was always there. He's the excellent special teams players. Offense, when it was right, unbelievable. Kyle, obviously, they go through a bit of a transition at the end of the year. It sounded like he was going to retire. Then he decided he wasn't going to, but Utah already made a decision and a promise to Morgan Scalley to hire Morgan Scalley. So Kyle takes the Michigan job. Kyle's gone. Utah's going into a season with a new coach for the first time in about 2 decades. Now they have Devin Dampier, who was awesome last year. They have a lot of the pieces who were really good last year, just up and down a little bit. I don't really know how to feel about Utah going forward, because I think Morgan Scalley's a good coach. He's been there with Kyle for the last 10 years. So it's not that I think he's a bad coach, but Jace, you know how I feel always about hiring from within, unless there's a better option.
I kind of feel like Utah's going to be the exact same team they were last year. You have Wayshawn Parker back. You mentioned Dampier. You're promoting from within. They retain a lot of a really good offensive line. They retain a lot of a pretty solid defense. But then at the same time, you lose some of your higher end players that follow Whittingham. Not a lot, but a few. And I just kind of feel like Utah's in the exact same spot. Roster wise, they're kind of in the same situation where they have a good quarterback, a good running back, a good O-line. They're going to run the ball. Don't have much of a threat in the air. I think Dampier is a decent thrower, but the receiver room is kind of a question mark this season. And then defensively, you lost your studs, but you retained your base. So again, I think they're kind of lateral on a roster perspective. Coaching wise, I think it's relatively lateral, and then they have like a pretty lateral Big 12 schedule. They have some frisky games in there, but they avoid a lot of the big difficult games. Obviously, they play the Holy War. So to me, they're just going to be like a solid 9-3. They're not going to threaten, I think, a playoff or threaten to be elite. But I don't see a world where Dampier, Wayshawn Parker, and a consistent team goes worse than 7 wins. So they feel like they're going to be right there on the border for me. And I think the week that we find out what Utah is second week of the season. They play Arkansas at home in Utah. Not that Arkansas is a world beater, but I think it's a decent to below decent SEC school. That's kind of a good measuring stick where if they beat Arkansas handedly, that tells me, all right, this Utah team is legit. This Utah team can win in the trenches. They're going to be a good team. But if that's a close game or they lose, then that kind of just tells me, all right, this is a very lateral move. They're just not going to be risky. They're not going to be frisky. Sometimes with hiring within, a fear is they try to just do the same thing to too much of a degree, to where you get too safe, you get too comfortable, and you avoid the big risks. Whereas if you're the new guy coming in, you can take those chances on big risks. So it'll be interesting to see if Scalley goes down the typical, we're going to run the ball even more now and be 8-4, and I'm fine with 8-4. Or if it's like, let's go big. Let's try to, change things up a little bit and take that next step. That Arkansas game, I think, will tell me the answer to that question.
I think what helps a lot is that, like you had mentioned, he was with Whittingham for the past 10 years as a defense coordinator. And what we had just mentioned about Texas Tech is that in the Big 12, if you can have a defense that is above and beyond one of the best in the league, you'll figure things out offensively. Like you mentioned, Dampier is one of the best players in the league. Now, what sucks, and that I just learned through, listening to his press conference at Media Days, is that they are replacing the entire offensive line. So, that hurts. But he had also mentioned that in the bowl game, a lot of those guys that have kind of been waiting in the wind got the chance to play. And he had loved their stories of sticking around at Utah and waiting for their time. And now their time's come. And I think offensively, they'll figure it out. But if they can kind of lean on the defense and, trust that they can help them to that Big 12 conference title game, because really, if the Holy War from last year, if that score switches, then it's Utah that's going up against Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Probably would have been the same result, but it might be what we see this year.
Yeah, and I believe that.
Yeah.
Real quick. I believe that game's played in Salt Lake City this year, so that gives Scaly like a chance year one. If you can beat one of the better BYU teams in recent memory, if you can take that team down, you got a chance in Salt Lake City to do it at Rice Eccles. Like that would immediately elevate Scaly into like, all right, this is our guy.
So then, will BYU have Monster Energy drinks there? Because I thought
that's what I'm wondering. Are
that's
they?
A good question.
Can they have caffeine on their jerseys?
That's actually a great question. I wonder how BYU as a school like feels about that. Like genuinely, I wonder if that's like a problem for them.
They're probably gonna have to do like the caffeine free ones. I don't know. Oklahoma State, I think we have to talk about just because they, to me, are the most what are we expecting team in the Big 12. Obviously, for those that don't know, they hire Eric Morris from North Texas. North Texas was one of the most prolific offenses in the country, probably the most prolific passing offense. I'm looking up Drew Mestemaker, who's going to be the Oklahoma State quarterback this year. He was with Eric Morris in North Texas last year. Look at these stats: 4,379 passing yards, led the country, all of the country, not just like FCS or lower level, all of the country. 34 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, tied for second in all of the country, 9 interceptions. He added 89 rush yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Long story short, they're a touchdown machine. Drew Messmaker himself had 39 total touchdowns for North Texas last year. Now, Eric Morris comes in. Mike Gundy had kind of refused to use the portal or NIL correctly the last couple of years, was the downfall of Oklahoma State, really. Now, Eric Morris brings in most of his North Texas team, at least for year one, with on top of some other players from the portal. What I don't know is that going to be enough for like 7 to 9 wins in the Big 12 just because their offense is so prolific? Like, are they going to beat the teams that they're equal to or better than because that offense can be so prolific, but then just lose to the teams that they should lose to? Or are they still a bad team and we're just too excited about the numbers their quarterback put up at a lower level last year?
I mean, I think they're going to be one of the most fun teams to watch in this conference. And Drew Mestemaker did all that after starting, probably heard this a million times, but 0 games in high school. And Eric Morris was a guy that took a chance on him at North Texas. So I think their bond alone is what's going to help strengthen, this new kind of regime at Oklahoma State. And he is joined by 18 other players from North Texas, as well as, Caleb Hawkins, their running back, who had over 1,000 yards. And I want to say, double-digit touchdowns, as well as Wyatt Young, who that trio alone is going to be fun to watch. Probably one of the best in the country.
Yeah, they're going to be a team that's like a really frisky 4-8 or a 10-2, and we're talking about them as the real deal. One of my big things that's always kind of fun to watch too, when you have these like big transfer, when a team kind of transitions to another team, we'll have it with Campbell and Penn State too. I think a lot of people always underestimate, like I've heard detractors say, oh, it was at North Texas. Like, okay, like, it's not going to be that way at the Big 12. But you go back and look at North Texas last year when they played Washington State, they scored 59 points. He had 4 touchdowns himself, Mestemaker. In all these games, USF was a ranked team. Tulane was a ranked team. He had some turnovers, but that was because they lost and they were playing hero ball. But before his 2 late picks against USF, he was 330 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. before he threw a couple picks late in the game when they were down 25, trying to make things happen. Like they competed against high level teams. And like that was an Alex Golish team, right? That's a Summerall team later in the year against Tulane. It's not like these were bum coaches. And not that the Big 12 is like a lousy conference, but I think there's a lot of defenses that aren't world beaters, right? Against a Utah, sure, it might be difficult, but look at Baylor last year. They were giving up 50 plus points a game to anybody that had a pulse. I don't see why Mestemaker and Eric Morris can't do that. And Logan, to your point, I love it with the chemistry. You've got your star wide receiver, your star running back, your star quarterback. Not only is that just good football on the field, that's good leadership. That's something that I think Oklahoma State's probably lacked the few years. They haven't had a lot of chemistry. They haven't had a lot of continuity on the roster. These guys, it's not continuity at Oklahoma State, but it's continuity in terms of these guys have played football together for half your team's played football together for 5 years. Like these guys know each other. They know the schemes. Yes, it's new because it's black and orange now, but the schemes are the same. The players are the same. The chemistry is there. They're a really frisky team. Like you said, they're going to be one of the most fun teams to watch. And that's just beside like Oklahoma State is a fun school and they're good. They have cool jerseys. They have that fun mascot, like good stadium atmosphere. Like when they're good, college football is better because of it. So I'm also just excited to kind of have that energy back.
What I'm scared of, and probably not much to be scared of as an Oregon fan, but they do have Oregon week 2.
Don't say
I'm
that.
just saying, if everything you guys are saying is right, week 2 where Oregon doesn't have a ton of look on what Oklahoma State's going to be this year, this is a vastly different Oklahoma State than last year's team. Like this isn't going to be a 59 to 59 to 10 win or something. But I mean, I don't think Oregon's going to lose, knock on wood, to Oklahoma State. But if what we're saying is right, they should be really frisky. They should be really fun to watch. And I'm looking at their schedule right now. I mean, outside of, they have Oregon at home, Houston on the road, Kansas State on the road, Texas Tech at home, ASU on the road. They do have room for 5 to 7 losses. But if they can knock 1 or 2 of those off, all of a sudden you're looking at an 8-9 win team. And in thinking about how down bad they were in the middle of the season last year after Mike Gundy got fired, like it's a tremendous year 1 potential step for Oklahoma State. So I think we just have to talk about DJ Lagway, and then we can either move on or we can end it. DJ Lagway is a very interesting character in the Big 12 this year. I think he's entered the last 2 years at expected to be the savior of Florida football. 2 years ago as a true freshman, you're going to come in, save Billy's job. Last year as a true sophomore, you're going to come in and save Billy's job, but you're hurt and can't practice at all in the offseason, or at least at all in the summer. This year he's coming in fully healthy. He seems settled. He seems like the weight of the world isn't on his shoulders. Like he's always had the talent. He's always had the skill. He still has the arm. I don't see why he can't put up numbers. And yes, he technically is coming in to save Dave Aranda's job. If Baylor has a bad year, Dave Aranda's fired. There's no skating around that. But I don't think he was brought in to save Dave Aranda's job. I think he was brought in to be a quarterback. Whereas in Florida, the expectations were, you're saving Billy's job if you guys do well, or you're going to be part of the reason why Billy got fired.
I do think the difference in expectations is going to be felt massively for DJ Lagway. I mean, if you remember preseason last season, I made the comment about I was not in on Florida. I thought they were going to be bad. And Florida fans genuinely had the belief that they were going to be competing for an SEC championship, potentially winning a national championship. Like we're making the playoff. The question is, can we win playoff games and win a natty? Like they were dead set on that was the minimum. And so the fact that, I mean, if that was the fan expectation, I can only imagine what the expectation in the building was. You can only, the air that was in Gainesville was probably all-time high. And when you're a young quarterback who's not very healthy and you're probably looking around like, we don't have the team to meet these expectations, you're trying to play hero ball, and that's when things go downhill fast. It's different. I don't think anyone in Waco is saying it's natty or bust. I don't think anyone in Waco is saying, hey, we have to go 11-1 and play in a Big 12 championship game, or you suck and we're going to be pissed. Like, I think the expectations are much lower. Yes, he's fighting for Aranda's job. I do think they have to make a bowl game, but the expectation of we got to go 6-6 at Baylor is a lot comfier than, hey, we got to play in an SEC championship game at Florida. So I think he's going to be a little more comfortable. He's said that he is finally fully healthy. I hope that pans out for him. One stop that I have, or one fear, this is a team that they had a horrible defense last season, just abysmal. And it didn't, they revamped the O-line or the D-line with 4 new transfer starters. But then the entire linebacker and corner room is essentially the same from last season, or it's bench players now coming into starting roles. That defense was atrocious. I'm not sure that like that much continuity is a great thing, especially as Aranda's supposed to be a defensive guy. And now he's gone 2 straight years of having one of the worst defenses in the Big 12. And then on offense, he's going to have 4 new offensive linemen, I believe, 2 new wide receivers to the team. The running back from last year, the backup, Pendergrass, has taken the step up to be the starter. I just don't know if he's got the help around him is what I'm getting at. And that makes me feel bad for the kid because I'm rooting for him. I would love to see Baylor and Aranda stick around. It's an interesting roster. It's a really hard roster to pick apart where it's going to land. And similar to Oklahoma State, this is a team that could be 1-11 or 11-1, and it'll be fun to watch, but it'll be interesting to see where they land.
To get the last hit on Lagway, he said himself, it feels like, he'll be able to play free. This was actually his coach that said that. And that when he was on his visit, felt straight-jacketed, which I'm surprised that is not blown up as much as I think it should but it speaks to what you guys were saying. Yeah, he goes to Florida, he has to be the savior. And now he goes to Baylor, which I believe is where his dad went, and he had been recruited from them out of high school. He's a Texas guy. So I had hopped off the train his last year at Florida, but I'm hoping to see some fun things from Lagway now at Baylor. So.
And for what it's worth, he won't have the hardest schedule in the country 2 years in a row at Baylor's this year. So maybe that alone will help him. Baylor is at plus 4,000 to win the conference towards the end of the list. But just going through the odds real quick, Texas Tech leads the way, plus 105. BYU's next up, a bit of a gap there, plus 550. Then it's Utah, Kansas State, Houston, TCU, ASU, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas, West Virginia, Baylor, UCF, Cincy, Colorado, and Iowa State. I didn't list Iowa State last on purpose, Logan. FanDuel did. Outside of Texas Tech, who you got to win the conference?
Jace, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm going to take BYU.
Texas Tech.
Yeah. I like BYU at plus 550. I think their 2 big games are going to be at Utah and then the Notre Dame game, but that Notre Dame game doesn't count against them. So it's going to be at Utah, probably to determine their fate in the Big 12 title game. Plus 550 for a team that's second last year, brought over everyone again. I think they could maybe topple Texas Tech in the championship game.
I love some value here, like I had mentioned with Houston there at plus 1,700. Not quite sure why Kansas State is right above them at plus 1,400. By no means do I think they're going to be bad, but I've seen what 2 years as a starter Avery Johnson has done, and kind of just been
Colin
all
Klein's
over.
there.
I just don't know if that's going to make that much of a difference. I had to look it up because I had forgotten they had lost their star receiver in Jace Brown. He's going to be catching passes from Sam Levitt over in LSU. Other than that, Oklahoma State, if you want to put some money on them at plus 2,700, that's a super long shot. But I mean, past that, I don't see a world where a Kansas, West Virginia, Baylor, any one of those teams are going to be able to make an actual run at even just making the title game.
I just muted myself. I agree with you. I think if I were to pick a winner outside of Texas Tech, it would probably be BYU. But if I'm just looking at teams that I wouldn't be shocked to see in the conference championship game, Houston's one of them. TCU, if Aiden Craig works out, like as a quarterback, he was really good at Harvard. You can say that's Harvard, but he had a really good career at Harvard. Definitely probably the smartest quarterback in the conference. He's a Harvard grad, and they have the bodies along the offensive and defensive line to really compete. They've retained a lot of players. Arizona, people forget, last year entering the season, people thought Brendan Marion was on his way out at Arizona, and Brendan Marion basically said, no, year 1 was rough. We didn't have the players I wanted. Year 2, they come out, they're really successful. Now, Noah Fafita's entering his last year at Arizona. If you can't, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a last year bump from Noah Fafita in Arizona. I don't think they're a conference championship team, but wouldn't hurt at plus 2,200. I can't believe how little people are talking about ASU this year. ASU, people talk about Texas Tech a lot, and rightfully so. ASU made the college football playoff before them. And they were 1 play away from beating Texas and getting you that Big 12 playoff win that you desire, Logan.
Should have won. Should have won.
Yeah, it should have won. Absolutely. Yep. Oklahoma State, it really depends, but I think looking at their schedule might be a little bit tough. I know you're a hater on Avery Johnson, Kansas State, rightfully so. But outside of me not being in that rivalry, Colin Klein was brought in for a reason, and he is a good offensive mind. And Chris Kleiman, I think he was a really good coach. There was just something that was wrong with Kansas State all of last year. We couldn't figure out what it was. Was it coaching? Was Avery Johnson not have his head on right? Whatever it was, something was wrong. If you told me they were in the championship game against Texas Tech or somebody else, I wouldn't be that surprised to hear that either.
One thing I'll say about Arizona State is I'm interested solely because they did bring in Cutter Boley out of Kentucky. And then also now just looking at their schedule, it might be the toughest in the Big 12, considering their non-conference game against A&M. And then also, don't sleep on these guys either. Probably one of the better G5 schools out there in Hawaii. So, and then when it comes to their Big 12 schedule, at Texas Tech, at home against Kansas State, at BYU, and then ending with at home against Oklahoma State and at Arizona. So if they make a run to the title game, they would have the utmost respect from me.
Right. All right. Well, that concludes our Big 12 Media Days pod. We've had a lot to talk about. We have even more, but we're about an hour and a half into this, so I'm going to conclude that there. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you check us out on YouTube at Flag for Discussion spelled out, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify at Flag for Discussion spelled out. We're on Twitter at F4 Discussion, TikTok at Flag 4 Discussion. Logan, it's first time of many. Thank you for joining us. It's been a blast. Any parting words you want to give to the listeners?
I would just say keep tuning into these guys because they're very enjoyable to watch Monday mornings on my drive into work in the first couple hours there. And excited to see you guys here on Thursday. These are probably going to be the slowest 3 days of work my entire life, but we'll grind through it.
Absolutely. Jace, go get married, buddy.
I'll do my best.
I'll make sure. It's Logan and I's job to make sure you show up to the altar. So we'll be there for you.
Good. I'm going to need it.
Well, on that note, from myself, Farhad Merkazi, our lovely guest, Logan Shanks, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, thank you for listening. This has been Flag for Discussion.